Hey y'all, welcome to Robin on the Farm. Today I'm making a batch of honey yeast rolls. These rolls are so good. They are definitely worthy of your Thanksgiving table, Christmas, any big family get-togethers, or just a simple weeknight meal. They are so good. Now I'm gonna use my bread machine dough cycle to make these honey yeast rolls, but you can easily make these by hand or in your KitchenAid or your Bosch. I will put the recipe down in the description and I'll include instructions on how to make it in your stand mixer, your bread machine dough cycle, or by hand. Let's just get started on the recipe. It's really easy, really fast to throw together. And when you use your bread machine dough cycle, you're taking some of the work off of you and letting your machine do it. So that's what I love, especially at this busy time of year. Okay, we're gonna start with 1 cup of warm to hot water. You want it to be about 105 to 110 degrees. So that right into your bread machine bread pan. Next, we want 1/3 cup of honey. I'm just using this organic honey from the grocery store. This stuff is good. I definitely like buying raw organic honey that's local, but I usually like to use the cheap stuff in my bread, and I like to use the expensive stuff on top of my bread, and I like to kind of savor it a little bit more that way. We used to have honeybees, and we used to have our own honey, and it was so good, but those bees were so much work. So I enjoy buying local honey now. It's worth the price. Okay, so 1/3 cup of honey. I like to spray my little container or my measuring cup before I put the honey in it, and then it just comes out that much easier. Next, we want 3 tablespoons of melted butter. You can also use 3 tablespoons of any kind of oil that you want, but I'm using 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Our next ingredient is our flour. I'm going to use 3 1/4 cups of bread flour. You can also use all-purpose flour. It's not gonna make that big of a difference. The bread flour is just gonna give you a little bit better rise to your rolls, and I like that. And I have a lot of bread flour, so that's what I'm gonna use, but you can definitely use all-purpose flour just fine. So 3 1/4 cups of flour. And our next ingredient is salt. I'm gonna use this Redmond's Fine Ancient Sea Salt. This stuff is cool because it's from North America. It's harvested out of Utah. I'm gonna use 1 1/2 teaspoons of this salt. You probably can't see it, but it's pink. It's kind of like the pink Himalayan sea salt, but it's from North America, so that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna throw this right on top of my flour. And our next ingredient is yeast. I'm gonna use this active dry yeast. You can also use instant yeast or bread machine yeast. It's all about the same. I use all of those interchangeably and I really don't notice a difference. But I like this Red Star active dry yeast. I keep it in my freezer and I pull it out just in time to make bread. So I'm gonna use 2 teaspoons of this active dry yeast. I used to make a little well in my flour every time I would add the yeast, but I just don't do that anymore. That's how I learned to make bread in my bread machine, and it really doesn't matter. Over the years, I've learned to just throw it all in there, throw it in my bread machine, and it's faster that way. So if you want to make it well, go ahead. If not, just throw it in there. And we're about to mix it all up anyway, so it doesn't make any bit of difference if the yeast and the salt touch. So those are all of the ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and throw this into my bread machine. This is my Zojirushi bread machine. For years and years, I used hand-me-downs and thrift store bread machines, and those worked great too. But when I finally matured enough to get a real bread machine, I got this Zojirushi Supreme. I really like this and it works great. And I use my bread machine almost daily. It's working and working and working, and this thing is holding up fantastically. I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna select the dough cycle and I'm gonna press start. Now this is the most important part of bread making with a bread machine. After just a few minutes, you have to check on your ball of dough. If it's too wet or too dry, your bread is just not gonna turn out well. So I'm gonna check on this in a few minutes and I'll show you exactly what it should look like. It's just been a few minutes and I'm checking on my ball of dough. This is looking great. It's tacky but not sticky. It's definitely not too wet. It's not looking too dry because it's a nice smooth ball of dough. This is looking just right. Now, if it was sticking to the sides or bottom, then I would know to add a little bit more flour. I would start with about 1/8 cup more of flour if yours is sticking, or if it's looking too dry and crumbly and not coming together in a nice smooth ball, I'd add about another tablespoon of water. Let it go a few minutes and then check on it, and it should look about like this. So now I can confidently shut the door of my bread machine and know that this honey yeast dough is turning out great. It's been an hour and a half and the dough cycle is complete. Check out the dough for our honey yeast rolls. Doesn't that look perfect? Now it's time to turn this out of the bread machine pan and divide them up into rolls. Today I'm making some pies also, so I have out my big dough mat. I should pull this out every time I make bread, but I don't. But you can just turn out your dough onto the counter if it's nice and clean, or you can get out one of these dough mats. They're really handy. I like them a lot. Okay, I'm just gonna turn this out from the bread machine pan. Oh yes, this looks great. Okay, now I am going to just press down this dough. Gosh, my dough is a little bit sticky today, but actually that's a good thing, because if it's a little bit sticky and not too dry, then you're gonna get fluffier, softer rolls. So after you've pressed out your dough, it's time to cut these into rolls. Now I'm gonna make 12 rolls out of this, but you can make them as big or little as you want. You'll just have to adjust the baking time. But I'm gonna pull out this is my dough cutting tool. That's what I call it. It's really a bench scraper. It's for doughs and that kind of thing, but it just cuts your dough so well. So I'm gonna divide this up into 12 rolls. And how I like to do it is to divide it into 4 and then divide each one of the 4 into 3. Just helps me with my math a little bit. If yours aren't all the exact same size, that's fine. But if you want to, pull out your scale and that'll help you get perfectly even rolls. But I don't really care that much. I think it'll be fine. Okay, so like I said, I'm making 12 rolls. And once I have it all divided up, I'm gonna grab a little bit of dough, and I just like to kind of fold it under. Fold it under, and kind of pinch the bottom. And what you see is that it gives you a nice rounded top to your roll. That's what I like. I like nice round rolls. You can also just cut these into squares and bake them that way if you want to do less hands-on, but I like little round rolls. Okay, so I'm gonna bake these in my 9x13 cast iron casserole dish. This thing is great for making your rolls, making casseroles, making cakes. I love everything about it. So I did oil it up really good. Every time I use my cast iron, I wash it and then I oil it and I put it back in the cabinet so that it's ready to go for the next time. Sometimes I'll have to add a little bit more oil, but this one's good to go today. So I'm taking this little piece of dough and I'm just folding it under, pinching it at the bottoms. It just gives you that nice round little roll. Now, I can smell these and I can smell the honey in them, so I'm excited for these. I think honey rolls are delicious. These are great for Thanksgiving, Christmas, family dinners, anytime you want a really yummy little roll. If you have any little kids in your home or grandkids, this is a fun activity for them to do. Keeps them busy, they feel like they're playing with Play-Doh, and it helps them to not be intimidated by baking and cooking. And if they do this, then the chances are when they grow up, they're gonna be baking and cooking in their own kitchen. They'll make these rolls and they'll have memories of doing it with you. So that's pretty neat to think about. Okay, here's our dough divided up into 12 rolls. They're already rising, so this is working great. I'm gonna go ahead and let these rise for anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes. Just kind of depends on the temperature in your home, the weather outside, I mean, so many different factors. But I'm gonna check on these in 20 minutes. I am gonna go ahead and cover these with saran wrap, just so they don't dry out. But I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'm gonna check on them in 20 minutes and see if they're ready to throw in the oven. I am gonna go ahead and get my oven preheated to 350 degrees, so that when they're ready, I can just throw them in. Okay, our rolls have been rising for about 30 minutes. They're looking great. I think they're ready to get thrown into the oven. So I'm gonna let these bake at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Look at these gorgeous rolls. Don't those look good? Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to eat one. Okay, y'all, check these out. Our honey yeast rolls, fresh out of the oven. I let these bake for 20 minutes, and I think they browned up perfectly. These look delicious, don't they? And they smell so good. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm going to take this stick of butter and I'm just gonna rub some butter all over the tops. So just make them nice and buttery tasting, and it just makes them look so pretty and shiny. I like that. This will also give you a softer roll, which is always the goal. Okay, these are looking good. Now, if you want to let yours cool a little bit, or if you have a few minutes before dinner and they come out of the oven, I would take a tea towel and just cover them up. That'll keep them a little bit warmer than if they were just exposed. But today, I'm gonna go ahead and dig into one of these rolls. These look fantastic. Okay, I'll just take this one. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, look at that. Soft, pillowy. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. Okay. Just gonna rip into one. It's really hot though. Hopefully you can see this okay. Look at that. What a gorgeous roll. Oh, these are gonna be perfect for Thanksgiving. Sometimes I serve these and sometimes I serve my pumpkin yeast rolls. Both are good. I might make both this year because they are both so yummy. Okay, let me take a little bite of this roll. Perfect. Sometimes you see a roll that looks really good and then you take a bite of it and it doesn't taste like anything. Not these. These are honey yeast rolls and that's exactly what they taste like. Okay, I wanted to be sure you could actually see these rolls. Oh my goodness. So good. It's so light and fluffy, like I could just squish this thing, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna break into it. Look at that. That is a perfect yeast roll. Absolutely perfect. Gorgeous color. Oh, nice and soft and fluffy, and they smell like honey. So I will put the recipe for these honey yeast rolls down in the description. You can print out the recipe, you can share it. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here with me on Robin on the Farm. If you make these, please let me know what you think of them, because I know you're gonna love them. I'll see you next time. Here are the bread bags that I use that solve the problem of keeping my bread and rolls nice and fresh. I will put the link down below.